Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our newest concept, the new podcaster spotlight. Here at the Gooners Pod, we bring you stuff you cannot find anywhere else. Today, we bring you one of the brightest up-and-coming podcasters in the Arsenal Podiverse. His name is Andrew. He loves Hamon Ruffles. He has a golden hand, and most importantly, he's the man with the impeccable voiceover work on the intro video that you see before every episode of the Gooners Pod.
Once upon a time, way back when there were only 9,000 Arsenal podcasts, 6 young men from various backgrounds. A young basketball prodigy with more trophies in the last 20 years than Tottenham Hotspur. An Irish kid with a horrible haircut. A young Jewish nerd who hadn't discovered food yet. A child from Hemel Hempstead who didn't want to be English no more. A handsome young man who learned to play football on the hard streets of Disney World. And a young Mexican AC Milan fan. Hatched a plan to take over the world of Arsenal podcasts. But then these boys became men. Jared. Ewan. Magic. Aston. Andy, and Miguel, and the rest, my friends, is history. And now, all these years later, you tune in every so often to hear their incredible takes, their football knowledge, and their sensual advice. But now, it's gone too far. You, our fans, are at long last witness to season
7.
Welcome to the Gooners Pod.
Hello, and welcome to TGP Season 7, Episode 74. Andrew, good to see you again. It's our pleasure, as always.
Thank you very much indeed. First, though, I would just like to disassociate myself from that voiceover. The quality of the microphone was appalling. The delivery needs some work. It's all a bit muffled, and I don't know about that accent. Whoever that was trying to do an American accent, they need some training.
It's horrendous. I do know that the person I purchased that from uses a Rock Band microphone generally for their voiceover work, and so I mean, if it's good enough for professional musicians, I figure it's good enough. But you know a little bit about what you're talking about when it comes to voiceover, so I'll
Sure.
take your word for it. This is our 404th episode. We completely forgot to commemorate number 400. It was the Charles Watts episode last week, but we've said every 404 episodes we want to have a special young podcaster on, and so here we are.
Well, you know what you should do is when this episode is finished, just delete it. So then it'll be 404 not found when everyone goes.
Look.
Genius.
So I'm not the only nerd who hadn't discovered food yet. You got a little bit of IT technical wizardry in you as well.
I have this little small website I've been doing for a while. I'll tell you about that.
Yeah, I think I saw that on Gopher or on a bulletin board on a BBS once.
That's it. It's GeoCities something. I don't know what it is.
Nice. Well, Mikey, good to see you again. Taking a break from your duties hosting not another Arsenal podcast, which I think that's bullshit because I watched it once and it is another Arsenal podcast. So why are you lying to people?
That's the secret sauce right there. What it is there's so many Arsenal podcasts. I didn't want them to get bored. So I threw a loop just to make them think it's something entertaining, and surprise, surprise, it's another Arsenal podcast.
Well, I do love the podcast. The chemistry is amazing. It only took you a couple hundred episodes to get there, but it's great. And the nickname for the pod, which is NAP, describes what you want to do when you're listening to it, and it's the only reason that we've nicknamed this podcast Touch Yourself. So
when we air at 3-4 o'clock in the morning in UK, I really don't blame anybody for sleeping, to be fair.
Andrew, have you caught their podcast? Have you stayed up for the 3 a.m. debut of the kickoff?
Funnily enough, no. Once it goes beyond sort of 10 p.m. here, I'm just sort of I'm old now, Mike. So, I gotta get my sleep and everything else. So no, I haven't stayed up. If you tell me it's worth it though, I might. Sometimes I get bouts of insomnia, so if I'm awake one night, I might give it a bash.
It's worth it, especially when he has other guests on like myself. But no, it's actually quite good. I'm not going to continue to plug it here though, because I haven't been paid nearly enough. But
At all.
6 years ago, Andrew, you joined us on our very first season when we had the basic common sense to do just an audio only podcast.
Mm-hmm.
You gave us an air of legitimacy. So here we are in 2023. We've exponentially grown our user base, our listeners from 2 to like well over 16. So
it's amazing growth. I'm very proud of you guys. I never thought it could reach such heights when we first met,
The dozen mark seemed a little ambitious, but we don't settle for mediocrity. We show a lot of ambition. I've poured a tremendous amount of loaned money into this podcast, and here we are. So, and lastly, before we get into the Arsenal, you've joined a very special club when it comes to the Gooners Pod, and it's not the club of people who every time they come on they regret it. Although you are in that club. Any idea what the club that you've officially joined with this appearance is?
Is it? I don't know how many times I've been on. So, is it like more than 5 appearances? Something like that.
It's a 7-time club.
Right.
So you've been a guest on 1.73% of the podcasts we've done.
I've
3
done
more episodes.
Times.
Yeah, we 3 more, and we could knock those out in the next couple days. And you enter the vaunted the 10 episode club where with such prestigious members as I think that's James next to you and Tom Canton. So
that's James from one of his horrible histories things. Yes.
Yes. You'd be in the 10-time club. Of course, this beautiful picture comes to us from our friend Sebi, who I believe you're a fan of his work.
Yes. He did the Dirty Dancing video thing, didn't he?
Well, you'll see he is a co-host of Mike's on Not Another Arsenal podcast. So just another reason to watch is you actually get to see the disgusting face behind the incredible work. But
so it's a bit like going on YouTube, isn't it? The disgusting face behind the incredible work. Thank you, to all of you people who watch what we do.
That's what I call Sebi. It's his Twitter name. So FA Cup yesterday. We're through. I don't know if it really matters or not, considering how everyone's just assuming that we're gonna lose the next round. But thoughts on the game? Does it matter? Should we be freaking out about the first half? Do we just ditch everybody but our normal starting 11? What are your thoughts?
Of course it matters. The FA Cup has a long history with this football club. I think this season it's maybe a bit easier to think it's not quite as important as it might be. But, this is a football club that has, down the years, managed to win both the FA Cup and the Premier League or the league title. 3 doubles we have to our name, 1971, of course, and then there was 98 and 2002. So it doesn't have to be an either or situation, with the FA Cup. Of course, there's Europe as well, but those seasons where we did the double under Arsene Wenger, we had Champions League football as well. So we were fighting across a number of fronts. I think the thing that probably concerns people really is just how much depth we have to play all these games. And the next round against Manchester City, they have a very deep squad. They've got plenty to bring off the bench. But I do think there are some interesting aspects to how City approach cup games as well. It's quite similar. Guardiola's approach is similar to Arteta's, or Arteta's is similar to Guardiola's, where he generally picks a stronger team than you think he's going to in cup competitions. And I think he's going to continue to do that. The question now is like, how much can we add to the squad before the end of the month to give us a bit more depth and a bit more leeway for players to come in and out, keep legs fresh and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot of fans always panic about the rotation and keeping everybody fresh and injury-free, because we do constantly freak out about injuries, obviously seeing Martinelli and Saka being played so much. But I remember it was in a Europa League where they questioned Arteta about rotating players, and he just mentioned players of world-class quality, something to that vein, play every 2 to 3 days. So
Mm.
for him, it's almost like a non-negotiable. He expects him to be able to play in 2-3 days. And he even kind of mentioned, hey, if I put it in their head that they're not capable of doing about it, forget about it. So I think he's very adamant of keeping them flowing, the body and movement stays in movement kind of thing, and not give them that excess worth of waiting time around. And I think for him, it's just keeping peak performance. I think you mentioned it on Arseblog where, there were a little concerns about how the players were going to sit back and relax during the World Cup, and Arsenal being one of the clubs that were really proactive in keeping their players moving around in order for them to not, lose their match fitness, which is completely different than just training, as we saw maybe with William Saliba coming back, having not played so many minutes in the World Cup. He kind of seemed a little bit more rustier than the players that actually stayed behind and trained in Dubai and played those 2-3 friendly matches.
I mean, the thing is, you can ask a lot of footballers, to play every 3 or 4 days, and if they can stay fit, they all want to play. Every player wants to play every game. The thing about it is that you do need to have some depth, and you need to be able to keep some legs fresh. And there are going to be days when the players who want to play maybe don't produce and can't get a goal or lack a little bit of spark. So you need something on the bench as well. It's not just about keeping players fit and keeping them from fatigue and everything else. It's about having other options and other ways to win football matches. So I think that's another aspect of what we need to do between now and the end of the month,
And not that this should be in lieu of a new signing, but it's crazy how when we're dealing with the banter days and the frustrating outcomes, that the new signing thing, it was just like sticking a knife in you, saying, when the club would come out with that. All of a sudden now, I literally, without even thinking of the phrase, ESR's return to me is like a new signing, and I can't believe I'm actually thinking in those terms without punching myself in the face. But how important do you think, and it's a big if, but it's, if this was corrective surgery that he is fully recovered from now and builds his match fitness over the next, say, 2-3 weeks, whether it's playing in, I don't know that you want to stick him in there in the next 2 games that we have, because they're so massive and we can't really afford for those to be rehabilitation assignments, but there are surely U21 games. Getting him match fit, is that a major part of our title run in this second half of the season?
Well, it's a major way or it's a very easy way to add some depth straight away in January without having to deal with the market, without having to deal with agents and clubs who are playing hard to get over their players. We have this guy. He was our second highest scorer last season. So if we can get him fully fit, I think it'll take some time, obviously, to get him back to proper match fitness. But then I read the quotes today where he's talking to Arsenal.com, and he said he's basically had this injury, this ongoing problem since he was 18 or 19. He's been playing with it the whole time. Has he ever been fully match fit? That's the question you have to ask yourself. So maybe we're going to see a new Emile Smith Rowe in this second half of the season. It'll take a few weeks at least to get him up to speed, but we're heading into February. I think there's 9 games in February. Remember, there was like 9 games in October or November or whatever it was. I think it was October, obviously, because World Cup started in November. We had that run of 9 games. So basically you're going, Thursday, Sunday, Wednesday, whatever it is, there's going to be a lot of football to play. And there's going to be a lot of minutes there. So I think, hopefully by mid-February, you're looking at a guy who is fully up to speed. If he can keep himself without any aggravations, without any, sort of setbacks or relapses or anything like it, I think this is a guy who gives us depth across a number of positions. Mikel Arteta spoke about him playing in midfield, spoke about him playing on the left, on the right. I think he likes the idea of Emile Smith Rowe as a 9, a false 9. He said that more than once. So when we're thinking about how we deal with absences or resting or a suspension or whatever it might be, he's a guy who can give you options in a number of positions. So fingers crossed, he can stay fit, because he's a really, really talented player. And, he's a guy who's got an eye for goal, not just when he starts, but from the bench as well. So I'm keeping everything crossed for him.
Mikey, I know you've got a follow up, but you mentioned the key words, which is something that I actually brought up a couple weeks ago and got absolutely slammed over it, because people just have short memories and sometimes very narrow minds. on Twitter. I wish there was a solution to that, another place to go. Anyway, the false nine thing. We saw it once to great effect against Villarreal in the semifinals of the Europa League, which is probably not a time to debut a new strategy, but I looked at the starting 11 that day when ESR was a false nine, and I mean I almost vomited when I saw it. And you compare that to who's in the lineup now. I brought that up before we really had started to build in any level of confidence in Eddie Nketiah, which I think he has earned at this point. But I mean, given the way Manchester City under Pep and Arteta typically like to play without a out and out number 9, but with a fluidity of attackers that can knock goals and passes behind your back line as quickly as possible. I mean, do you think that we should just be scarred forever from the false nine thing, or is that actually a strategy you see being employed?
I mean, we saw it once and it didn't work, but that doesn't mean it can't work. I'm not saying it's necessarily something that I think we should make plans around, but as a possible backup if Eddie gets a knock or can't play or what have you, what do we have in the squad? We've got Gabriel Martinelli, who could play as a center forward, and that would mean Smith Rowe playing on the left probably, or we can go with the Smith Rowe as a false nine type thing. You'd like to think that it was something that if they were going to use, they would train it. You know what I mean? They would train that at London Colney. They do some work on it and everything else. We don't get to see that, of course. We only get to see the kind of funny little videos from training, bit of match, bit of rondos, all that kind of stuff. And we don't get to see the nuts and bolts of what goes on. But if we don't bring in a striker, if we don't bring in another forward who can play as a striker or across the forward line, our options are pretty limited until Gabriel Jesus comes back. And what Mikel Arteta said after the FA Cup last night kind of worried me a little bit, because he said we're going to be many months without Gabriel Jesus. So whether
I heard he was coming back early.
Well, that's it. Maybe Arteta is, feeding us misinformation and he's going to bring him back quicker and everyone's going to be delighted. But maybe he just sort of let something slip that he didn't feel like sharing with everyone until now. So if he says many months from now, we're pretty limited in striker terms. I don't think there's a young striker coming up through the academy who's quite ready yet. The one who's most ready, of course, is on loan in France. And as it stands, we've only got one striker. Arteta said that's a problem. That is a problem. And I think he is probably more inclined to try and solve that problem with what he has. I'm not saying he wouldn't want a signing, but I'm just saying as he's sitting down at his desk and talking with his coaching staff, I think he will try and find solutions that he's got to hand. If we get something in the market, all well and good, that will be great. But until then, he's just got to assume that what we have, we hold. And if Smith Rowe as a 9 is one of his contingencies, then I guess we'll see in time.
On the whole Smith Rowe playing 9, just referring to the Villarreal game that you brought up, Mikey, is one thing that I remember. I don't know if that was part of the heat that popped up, but I remember the biggest thing for a lot of fans was last minute Kieran Tierney getting injured, and instead of moving Bukayo Saka at left wing back, essentially something that he's done previous, and he played well, and ended up being Xhaka at left back. And I remember that freaked a lot of people out in the early days. I mean, that and like the Williams signing must be like the two.
It was the whole thing. I mean, like that
yeah, it was a pretty
mess for such an important game. It was known to be a mess. It's not like even just looking back on it a year from now, when you look back at like the League Cup lineups from 2014, and you see the utter dross that we had in that lineup. It's not like looking back with 8 years of hindsight. When the lineup came out that day, I think we all just started planning for.
I'm just looking at it here now. Holy shit!
Yeah, was Wendo still in that?
Our ratings will go up if you actually vomit on air.
Wow, I'm just looking like, for people who don't like, Leno, Holding, Chambers, Pablo Marie, Danny Ceballos, Martin Odegaard, Thomas Partey, Smith Rowe, Xhaka, Saka, and Pepe.
This was a European and Xhaka, not the Xhaka that we have now, and he was playing in left back. This is a European semifinal against
was Aubameyang injured going into that game or something? Or
who?
Aubameyang.
I think well, I don't know. Maybe he was late.
Yeah, he was. He didn't play the game before against Everton.
And Lacazette was there too, right?
He wasn't on the bench
at the time. Huh. I wonder what.
Dude,
it's funny how you live these things and they scar you for weeks on end. But like a year or so later, when the new season starts, you kind of forget about what's going on.
Was that game the 0-0 or was it a 2-1?
2-1.
Yeah, I think we got a penalty and they got 2 goals because we sucked and
because we sucked.
Oh, just bad memories.
Andrew was keeping the conversation.
But that's
slightly
I think it could work. I think it could work.
I'm
just basically trusting everything at this point. Sorry, Mike. I'm just trusting everything at this point. If they don't want to sign Mudryk because of the cost, I'm fine with it. If they want to spend 90 million on him because they believe he's worth it, I'm fine with it, even though I don't think he's worth it. If they want to, somehow go with ESR as a false nine, I mean, I you can call me naive. I've definitely been called that. I could be accepting of mediocrity. I live with myself, so I'm fine with that. But I just feel like even though nothing's actually been won yet, I kind of just feel this trust that I haven't felt in the club since I knew how to not trust a club, which was a long time ago. I don't think you're as gullible as I am, so I'm not going to assume that you're in that phase, Andrew, but you do seem a little bit more calm about just in describing the desire to fix depth shortages from within. There's not ranting and raving that I would normally associate with Arsenal and podcasts.
Well, I don't think I've ever really been ranty and ravey unless I'm talking about the opposition or John Terry or something like that. But I think what it is, Mike, is that like you, I have a level of trust in the way that the club is being run now and the way that our recruitment has been carried out, which is different and better. And I've lived through, as you have and as Mike has and as everyone watching this has, we've lived through too many bad deals for all kinds of reasons, whether it's short-term, quick fix, sticking plaster guys, whether it's agent-led deals, whether it's just poor thinking, contract renewals. The club hasn't been smart for quite a while, and it feels like we're smart now. And I think the decisions that they make, look, we've seen them. They've made decisions which are difficult to live with in the short term for the longer, medium to long-term benefit. And that is hard to do in football. It's really hard to do in football because football is the most short-term business or industry or whatever you want to, sport, entertainment in the world, because you can be as happy can be at kickoff, and then at the end of 90 minutes, you want to kill everyone, burn everything to the ground, flail around in their entrails, and then just throw a complete Mickey fit. That is what football can do to you. And if you're on social media, you'll see people do exactly that, apart from maybe the entrails bit. So it's hard, to make these decisions, which are medium, long-term decisions for the longer benefit of the club at the expense of short-term thinking. But I'm sort of on board with it. I'm happy that they are willing to maybe take a bit of pain for a bit more gain down the line.
Yeah, in my role as Jewish Ramble, the younger, very, very much worse version of the financial guy to Swiss Ramble, a couple years ago when I actually started to see what was about to happen, you can kind of look behind the scenes, see what they did with the wage bill, just for one thing, and you really start breaking it down. That's when I really started saying, there have been some mistakes. There have been some things that might not have been mistakes, but they certainly didn't pan out. Willian being one of them. I mean, I didn't hear that many people complain about it when we signed him on a free.
But I think it was a mistake. I think we did what we do as football fans, which is try and see the best in what your club does. And I think we tried to talk ourselves into that deal being a good one, because he had experience. He'd won a lot. Could he have brought something to the team? Yes, he possibly could have. But we gave him a 3-year deal, and I don't want to go over it again. But
he saved our ass by leaving.
I also don't believe he just left. I don't believe for a second he just left and said, "No, take."
Well, they mutually agreed to terminate.
They mutually agreed to terminate the contract with a great big fucking suitcase of money.
Yeah, well, exactly.
You're a finance guy. You know how to do it.
Do you think that was part of the deal?
I'll mutually agree to never podcast again, but it's not just going to be voluntarily. I mean, it's gonna. I'll agree.
It would be an interesting deal to say, like, hey, we're going to pay you to leave, but we need you to publicly say that you're choosing to leave because we've already done this enough with people, so we got to put a lid on that.
Yeah, football clubs spin things all the time, the time. So look. Let's not be naive about that one. Anyway, look, we were talking about better things, or we're talking about us being better and smarter and
I think
happier and all that. So should we go back?
Until if you're the type that says, I don't trust anything that I'm hearing from the club because we've been told this and told this. You also kind of, when you start to see things that improve, you also have to be willing to say, until I'm proven wrong that they kind of know what they're doing now, I'm going to put my faith in them. And sometimes that goes to moves you don't make. It's not just about whether you make moves and how you make them and when you make them. It's about the moves you don't make. So thoughts on a certain Joao Felix. That's so Chelsea, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, all they're doing, Chelsea, is they're looking around and seeing what other clubs are doing, and then they just come in and pay more money than the other clubs are going to. That's basically their transfer policy. It has been since Todd Bowley came in and took over, and it's quite fun in some ways because it's just so scattergun that like it can't possibly work, and all you do is you end up with a very bloated, very expensive squad, which is imbalanced. And it's impossible for Graham Potter or any manager that they bring in to make something that's useful, and cohesive and everything else. Look, he's a good player. Hasn't really gone as well as people would have liked at Atletico Madrid. Let's face it, Atletico Madrid overpaid for him by a huge amount. No two ways about it.
And then played a completely different type of football than what he's accustomed to playing. I mean, it's a weird mismatch.
It is. I mean, maybe Diego Simeone thought he could mold him into the player he wanted him to be, but I'm not sure that that's who he is. And
I think he wanted him to be Diego Godin. I mean, like there's, I don't know who he wanted him to be. He doesn't play that way, Simeone, but. No.
But the money is just too big. For 5 months, it's too big. What you could do with basically 20 million euros, what you could do with that, to secure or help secure the, the services of a good player on a permanent basis, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, 20 million euros. So like it never really made sense on a financial level. Like if it had come down, the loan fee, I remember we were trying to loan Ivan Perisic a couple of Januaries ago, more than a couple, maybe 3 or 4 Januaries ago. But Inter Milan wanted like 6 million euros as a loan fee that year. So loan fees are just a bit crazy, particularly when you have to pay the wages as well. So this one never really made sense on a financial level. The question is for me, if they wanted João Felix and Mykhailo Mudryk, who else have they got on their list? Who else is on their list? It can't be just
there's got to be the one thing that last January told us was there weren't enough people on the list because I'm fine with, we can't get Vlahovic. We're not signing Isaac for £75 million release clause. That was a great move. And that was a great non-move. And I was for it at the time. I didn't love that we didn't add anybody. I was surprised we didn't loan anybody in just because we knew that the last 4 months of the season, there were likely to be an injury or two. And it absolutely gutted our back line more than our attack in the last couple games. But, the one thing I faulted them for was, where are the 7 or 8 people that you think might be available, might be worth tempting, and having all the different balls in the air at the same time? Because not only does that leave us at the end of January, and if the Mudryk thing collapses, or if we're not looking after a midfielder, there we go again. But it's also a negotiating tool to know that you're not just so known to be in for one person. And maybe they are, but we don't need to see the list. I just like to know that there was one.
Yeah, but I mean, we saw them surprise us with the Fabio Vieira transfer. Nobody knew that was going on. Towards the end of the last window, we were definitely interested in Ferran Torres. Barcelona, as we know, don't have 2 pennies to rub together, 2 pesetas to rub together. They've gotten, they're in financial bits, so they've got some players who might be available on the market. If the João Felix thing doesn't or hasn't worked out, maybe Ferran Torres is somebody that we could look at again, whether it's a loan or whether it's a loan with an obligation or a loan with an option to buy at the end of it. I'm not quite sure. There are lots of players out there. I hope that they do have more on their list than just João Felix and Mudryk. I mean, if they're after 2, it means they feel like they need 2. So let's hope that there's something else going on behind the scenes.
I was under the impression, to be honest, every time we saw the links between Mudryk and Felix, I was always under the impression that it was going to be one or the other, because kind of both of them could play across the front 3. So I assumed it was always going to be one another. And one thing a good mate of mine, Kelly, mentioned that we kind of start getting overwhelmed with these transfer fees, and now they're saying that the Mudryk deal could potentially reach up to 100 mil, which is what they originally wanted. But now that it seems that Felix is all but signed with Chelsea, don't you think there'd be a little bit more leverage on Arsenal, where they don't essentially have that Chelsea buyer pushing, saying we'll match whatever Arsenal have to offer you? Do you think there's any way that works out better for us if the Felix deal goes through prior to us finalizing the Mudryk deal? And not to quote your co-host, but not to urinate in anybody's Wheaties, but that deal is not done yet. Something to that effect. It's circulating, which is hilarious. But something to that effect. But essentially, we're bidding against ourselves or bidding against no one at this point if we're removing Chelsea from that.
I kind of think it's always been us, though. I don't think he wants to go to Chelsea. They might have caused us problems with Shakhtar, but I don't think they've caused us any problems with the player. I think he wants to come to Arsenal. So on that basis, maybe it does clear the decks a little bit. Maybe Chelsea are still interested. Who knows? I mean, we're still interested in the player. So they're probably still interested in him, because they're interested in every player that every club is interested in. But it might just sort of, focus the negotiations. I don't think this is being held up by a lack of desire from Arsenal to get the deal done. I think this is to do with making sure that the deal is the right deal for us, based on, this player, his age, his relative experience, and his talent and potential, which if Shakhtar believe in so much, this is why I think Arsenal are trying to do a deal that's much more heavily weighted towards incentives and add-ons and achievements. You know what I mean? So if they think he's going to be a Golden Boot winner one day, if they think he can help Arsenal win the league, build those payments in, but he's got to make those things happen before those payments get made. And that's probably where the hassle is. But yeah, who knows with Chelsea? They could just put their big, stupid blue spoke in the wheel tomorrow and fuck it all up again. I don't know. But you would like to think that getting João Felix in, they just signed a young striker from Norway as well. They do have a number of fairly well-recognized forwards at the club anyway, with Havertz. I like that.
Fair play.
Like Aubameyang as well, they have. So, let's see. Let's see.
Are we gonna talk about your cheeky tweet from yesterday? The SMS message you got from somebody.
I didn't tweet that.
Was that
Confirm savage is what he's
was that
saying.
somebody else? I heard we were interested in the defensive midfielder Alvaro iMessage from Getafe, but
Billy WhatsApp. We're after Billy WhatsApp. Don't tell anyone. It's an exclusive for you guys here on episode 404.
We're getting the inside scoop on all the different communication based people, but I don't know. There was some murmur, some hubbub on Twitter yesterday about a short message something.
No idea.
Ever since Elon took over, there's been all types of tweets floating about.
It's almost like you got to go to Mastodon and check out what's going on there. But
I did, but I can't figure it out.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to do a little tutorial, but but we're not there yet. Spurs away, United home. Despite the fact that I'm excited to be over for those games, which means the away one might not go so well. The home one will be an automatic win. We got those two games, Everton, Brentford, all league games before Man City. I hate this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How many points out of those 12?
Well, to be honest, Mike, we're not thinking that far ahead. We're just concentrating on the next game, and that's the North London derby.
That's true. I shouldn't be asking about 4 games on the next one.
We're in a good position, but we go game by game, and that's our only focus at this moment in time.
Are you on the club now? I mean, I know that you're very close to the club, but the we thing is it's telling. I think there's an announcement today.
Seeing as we're facing Manchester City in the next round in the FA Cup, do you like the idea of playing them prior to playing the league? Because I'm not too stoked about that. I rather look. I say show our hands, but I mean Arteta worked under Pep Guardiola for a very long time. But we saw how the game played out last season, where we were able to dominate them for the majority of the game and just ended up tying or losing that game in a soul-wrenching way, which is like a shot that was like a deflection that went in, and the Bernardo Silva / Xhaka penalty. Do you think it has any influence whatsoever? Are you pretty relaxed about the whole situation about playing them fairly in close succession?
I would prefer not to, because they're just a brilliant team and we've got such a poor record against them. And look, I think like you, we've made progress, and I'd be more confident that we could get something from Man City. I just feel like it would be more likely in a one-off game. If you ask me, between the two of them, which one would I choose? It's obviously the Premier League game. I would choose that. But this is the way it works. I can remember countless seasons where we've had to play Chelsea or Liverpool or Manchester United in the cup, and somehow there's these quirks of the fixture lists where you end up playing the same team 2 or 3 times in close succession. I remember one year, oh God, no, I've triggered myself. I don't want to talk about it, but it was to do with Chelsea, and we ended up playing Chelsea like 3 times in the space of a few weeks, and it was like didn't end well. Anyway,
well, it's like 2 legs of a Champions League match surrounded.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. I don't want to go there. I was trying to just immediately wipe it from my memory. So
the Champions League.
It's just the way it is, I think. When you're a team that's at the top of the table, when you're a big team, you're going to have to face other big teams. And I think in some ways, I'm not saying we've had an inferiority complex, but, we've had a poor record against Liverpool in recent years. And this season we beat Liverpool. And I think we're overdue a win against Manchester City. I really do. I think we're due a win, and a win away from home at that, not just at home, but a win away from home. Which game it's going to be, I'm not 100% sure. I think there probably will be a bit more rotation for the FA Cup game. It'll be a strong team, of course, because of the opposition, but I just have a sneaky feeling about the away game at the Etihad in the Premier League. So yeah, I'd prefer to be playing an easier team in the FA Cup for sure, but it is what it is. You got to get on with it. And I think the thing that we don't think about too much as fans is how much the players relish games like this. These big, big games. They love playing in those. And I think that is that's something we go like, oh crap, no, Man City again. This is going, but they love it. They love it. And I think we've seen that this is a team that is rising to challenges and is looking to make statements, and hopefully they can make some statements against Man City this season.
Yeah, I hope so. Let's get to some user questions. We've got a few that we start. If you have anything you want to ask Andrew in the next, we'll say 5 to 10 minutes before we got to go, let's do that. Let's start with a question from Vivek from the San Francisco Bay Area, San Jose specifically. At the start of the season, we were talking about rotation with a few players, KT and Zinchenko. Aside from the left back position, do you think we have rotation availability for the run-in?
Good question. I mean, we do at right back, obviously, with Ben White and Tomiyasu. I think we probably do at centre half as well, because we can get Ben White and Tomiyasu in those positions too. Where we don't necessarily have the strength is, I think, in the central midfield area, where, look, I love Mo Elneny, but there's a difference between him and Partey, and there's a big difference between Albert Sambi Lokonga and Granit Xhaka, as we saw last night. Smith Rowe coming back gives us a bit of rotation option as well, for sure. He can play on the left, he can play on the right. Apparently he can play as a false nine as well. We'll have to have a discussion about that one day. And I think he can play, potentially he's somebody who could play in the Xhaka position, in that sort of advanced left eight. I can see him, his ability would allow him to play in there. And then I think it's about what we can bring in the window and what that might allow us to do. So I don't think we're quite as strong as we would like, but I think we do have enough in certain positions to get us through. But we're very heavily dependent on those two central midfielders, those two experienced central midfielders staying fit, because without that, I think we're going to have a few problems.
Okay, good answer, Vivek. Hopefully that satisfied you. I mean, the guy, he's a new podcaster, but he knows his shit. So.
Yeah, I'm settling into this. This is quite good fun. I might give this a bash.
Yeah, you've got some compliments in the chat about your professionalism. Can a player who wears number 9 be a false 9 given their actual 9? You have 9 seconds to answer this question.
Yes, if he wears his shirt inside out.
Okay. That's insight right there.
Boom.
Anytime you see Mikey's head go down like this, you know that you've caught him with humor, wit, or absolute intelligence, or a combination of the three.
Or something ludicrous, yeah.
At Arsenal, it's clear, this is from Matt Lacasse, that Arteta and Edu are in charge. Can you say for sure who's calling the shots at Chelsea? Feels like a tug of war at the moment. I don't think it feels like a tug of war. It just feels like a guy saying,
it's Todd Bowley with his fucking rope just going, woohoo! Let me buy players.
I could picture him with the dartboard, throwing it with names.
With answering this question, can you? I mean, I love how everyone from the U.S. is a cowboy compared, like for people around the world. But in this case, it's pretty true. At what point does this, I guess, attempt to endear himself to the Roman Abramovich loving Chelsea supporters / misguided thinking of how football works? At what point, let's say they miss the top 4 and they don't win anything and they're out of Europe next season, at how many seasons of that do you think happens before Todd Bowley goes completely the opposite direction and guts the team for a good old-fashioned American rebuild without a draft?
I don't know. I mean, would he? I don't know. This is a crazy idea, right? But maybe he could hire some people who know what they're doing. That might be something for you U.S. business guys to consider. I don't know. I mean, look, I'm enjoying this as it stands. I think it's kind of crazy what's going on. They've thrown so much money at this team and it's in 10th. So long may that last. Nevertheless, I do remember in not too distant times in the past where we've been languishing a bit and we got our act together and, they do have the resources to pull themselves out of trouble, but hopefully they remain in this sort of quicksand for quite a while.
Yeah. I mean, it almost feels like with one simple move, United has figured out how to get themselves out of their current situation. I mean, they've got a long way to go to to be at the top. But I mean, I think on the pitch they've figured it out a bit, just by finally getting them rid of the Ronaldo problem. Chelsea's issue is a little bit more systemic, but then they've also got all this talent. It's bizarre. I mean, it's fascinating to watch, and I'm going to dig into their numbers a little bit more to see how sustainable this is, because somehow I'm told that reliably that they are not really even that close to FFP guidelines after what the changes in that over COVID were, and kind of averaging it over a number of years and getting £1.5 million of a loan forgiven, which may or may not play into that somehow.
Is it something to do with a new owner taking over as well, and how they might be able to invest in the early stages? I'm not sure.
But I think it's similar to
I hope this is a joke, Matt, Mark, but I'm guessing this means, where does the Felix signing leave Auba? Do we take him back for 40 million? That better be a joke, or I'm hitting you over the head on Friday at our dinner with a lamb rib.
Well, if they pay us 40 million, I'd take
plus
back.
one.
Yeah, if they pay us the 40 million. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Take him back.
Mikey, this might be for you. What happened to the Chuck? And I say this just because you're Mexican. What happened to the Chucky Lozano links?
The man is too much of a baller for the Arsenal. You know, after the legacy that Carlos Vela left behind. I mean, how do you back that one up? No, I think I
wanted to point out
game.
that I'm asking you because you're Mexican, because I didn't want people to mistake the fact that I thought that you knew anything about transfer links.
So. No. Last thing I heard is he was linked to, what is it, West Ham? I think. I don't know. He's starting and doing great at Napoli, so I don't think he's leaving anytime soon. Napoli is one of the better teams in form right now in Serie A. They're still first.
Do you think, another Chelsea-related question, but if we do sign Mudryk, do you think we'll go the Chelsea route, Andrew, and give a very long-term deal, i.e. 6 or 7 years? And for me, when I look at the wage bill and how amortization of contracts work, if you have someone who's in their lower 20s, what is real? I mean, other than a potential Ozil situation, which I guess is the answer to my own question, what's the downside with giving somebody a 6 or 7 year contract that you don't have to worry about renegotiating every 2 or 3 years, and maintains value of the player and lowers the actual annual wage bill that you're paying?
Yeah. Didn't we give
see more of those?
We gave Seska a 6 or 7 year deal at one point, I think. You would assume that, like in any contract, there's going to be, increases and everything else. I think the thing will be finding the balance between, like, sometimes a transfer fee tells you about the value of a player, right? And what they should be earning. So he might think, well, look, I've cost twice as much as Gabriel Jesus. What's my wage in relation to Gabriel Jesus's wage in Arsenal, which is, around 200 grand a week, whatever it might be. But there's no way that Mudryk coming from Shakhtar Donetsk, where he's earning a few grand a week, we could, if he's earning 5 grand a week, we could give him 50 grand a week. It's, it's a huge increase for him. It's still a substantial wage. And there might be ways of, obviously adding to that year by year, again, based on incentives. There could be built-in increases and all that kind of stuff. So maybe I don't quite know. I guess we'll find out in the end, but Arsenal will never announce it. They'll say like a long-term deal, which is usually 5 years. So maybe they might do 5 years plus one, something like that, because they've had the plus ones on a number of contracts of late. But I think they might do something which means it's not going to be a hassle in 2 years' time where you're sitting there going, he's got 2 years left on his contract. What do we do? I think they will, after all the effort of trying to bring him in, try and minimize that aspect of things. Yeah.
Yeah. And normally if you see somebody coming in, just usually a 5.5, unless they're an older player where you would have like a 3.5 or whatever. So, But the question from Matt D'Souza: why are Mike Elliott and chums coming to the UK in mid-January? Who the fuck comes to the UK in mid-January? I have business to take care of while I'm over. I didn't know Elliott was over until I saw this question, texted him. He's like, "Yeah, I'm here now."
I know
he didn't want you to know. Matthew just ratted him out.
Yeah. So, so when are you coming over? Are we having a reunion where I sit in the crowd and watch you and Elliot entertain people?
Oh, who knows? We'll chat behind the scenes and see what we can dream up. But yeah, if we can do something again, at the end of the season, we definitely will. And if we can do something somewhere else between now and the end of the season, we'll try and do that too. So yeah, We're talking. We're talking. There's negotiations going on. The deal is not close, but we're confident that something can be an agreement can be reached in due course. But here we go.
I got my phone right here, and there's a special ringtone, so I'll just wait by the phone.
You do that,
and
I'll let you know
for the ticket buying details.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Any other user questions before we get going? We have one from admin at arsenalfc.social. What is it that you find confusing about Mastodon? Is it the because we love it over there, except we want to hear more from you.
I just don't know what it does, and I don't know where everyone is, and I don't know when I post something where it goes, and I don't know who is replying to it, and I can't see what the fuck is going on, and I just don't get it. I can't.
But other than that,
it's just like Twitter, just way more complicated. That's it. Way more complicated. I'm still figuring it out too, Andrew.
I've got 15 notifications here. But like, where is everything? Where is the stuff? Where is all the stuff?
All right, we'll do a little bit more. I got to get the technical versions of my of my co-admins to
sure.
We need to do an educational podcast series, which will be fun. And
seven seasons of how to learn how to do Mastodon.
This is episode 405 of
7,000 of how to do Mastodon. Today, how to post something.
Mastodon for dummies.
Yeah, exactly, man.
Tutorial videos.
Who knows? I'll play around a bit more and keep an eye on it. But
I'll try to drag you into conversations and maybe.
Thank you, King Joey.
Through attrition, Joey from Richmond just wants to say he's been a huge fan. Keep up the good work. Same goes for Mike and Mike. Love you guys. He's a good hug, that guy. I can tell you from firsthand knowledge. And I'm just gonna kind of pile on to what Joey said. All kidding aside, the fact that I feel comfortable enough around you to joke about you being a new podcaster without people thinking I'm being serious about it is a testament to how kind you have been to us over the years. Appreciate your agreeing to come on with us, and not just us. You do this for so many people, and you don't have to, and it's just really very much.
I do have to, because I ask.
You always say that, but you don't.
I do. I mean, it's pay it forward. Isn't that the expression?
Yes, that I agree with. And yeah,
I ask people to be on my podcast. If they ask me to be on their podcast, I feel like I should do it, unless it's a complete undesirable, in which case I won't. You're only vaguely in the sort of undesirable column, Mike, so that's why I'm here. It's other Mike that brought me in. Yeah,
we're redlining right now, and I spoke more than the agreed on 52% of the time that was in the contract. So I think we have to refund you.
You'll hear from my agent. Don't worry.
Yes, we will.
Anyway, listen, a pleasure, and keep up the good work. And I know you've got some people waiting in the wings, probably. So.
Yeah, if you're watching this, we'd love you to join us for the next show. It's a back-to-back, just double feature today. We starting in 5 minutes. Back on our pod. It's not going to be on this link, so just kind of exit out. Go to goonersubscribe.com if you need to get back to the main page. But we're doing the first round proper of the Football Phrases FA Cup. We got 64 incredible phrases competing for the honor of being in the round of 32. And to judge us, we've got some first time, that we have Lee Dixon and Peter Drury and Sophie Nicolau. So we've got the number one commentating team for NBC Sports, two of the best in the game, if not the best in the game, joining us. And the show's going to be in the ascendancy, hopefully, when that's going on. So join us there. Join Andrew at the Arsecast Extra, still every Monday and Friday.
Monday, Arsecast Extra, Friday, regular Arsecast, and lots of stuff in the week on our Patreon and on the site and everything else. So, yeah, people know where to go, I think.
Well, Andrew, it's been lovely. Thank you for joining us. Mikey, good to see you again.
My pleasure.
Always a pleasure, dude.
All righty. And we are not going to play the outro today because I want to quickly get out of here. So come on, you Gooners.